Welcome to part one of my video on the amazing, interesting, and full of debauchery life of the legendary actor of Hollywood's golden era, Errol Flynn. He had a short but fast life. Let's take a look at what happened. Hi everyone, and welcome to Tragic Hollywood on This Town. I know I've been missing in action, but I'm back. So remember, this is a 100% AI-free channel. Support your AI-free channels, okay? Anyway, this week we're going to be talking about one of the craziest, wildest actors of Hollywood's golden age. He was so wild and crazy and got away with everything that there was a term developed, and it was called "in like Flynn." And that term meant that you could get away with it. You're in like Flynn. Meant, yeah, you're good. You can get away with whatever bad thing you're doing. Because that's pretty much what happened to this actor. We are, of course, talking about Errol Flynn and his wicked, wicked ways. That was the title of his biography, which was quite entertaining, but I think it was heavily embellished because he liked to embellish what really didn't need embellishing, and that was his amazing, unbelievable life and his lifestyle. He was more entertaining and interesting off the screen, in my opinion, than he ever was on the screen. But before we get into Errol Flynn, if you like my content, I'd really appreciate it if you'd actually watch my videos, for one. And also like and subscribe and do all those things. Errol Flynn is in my first book, Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Dead. This is what his chapter looks like. Yes, he liked young girls, very young girls, and it got him in trouble. All right. Like, subscribe, check out my books on Amazon. There's a link in the description in the channel. And let's get right into Errol Flynn. So, Errol Flynn was born in, of all places, Tasmania, the little devil. And he was born to Australian parents. His father was a very prominent biologist, actually a zoologist and biologist. And his mother came from the seafaring folk, he said, which explains his fascination with boats later on in the sea and all of that stuff. He started things off right off the bat with getting expelled from college. He claimed it was for a sexual affair that he had with one of the housekeepers. However, it has been later determined that he was actually expelled for theft. So, I don't know. It seems more in line with his character that he got expelled for sexual exploits rather than theft. But, you know, whatever. So he went into acting, and he actually became a rather prominent actor in Australia. So he was really already a star in Australia before Hollywood ever heard of him. So he had proved he had super charisma. I mean, I don't think he was the greatest actor, but he was fabulously good looking, and he had really, really good charisma. He received some professional acting training in Britain. He secured a job with something called the Northampton Repertory Company at the town's Royal Theatre. And he worked and received his training as a professional actor for 7 months here. But there was a disturbing incident that happened with Flynn at this place. So, maybe not as happy-go-lucky of a guy as he presented himself later on. He actually threw a stage manager down the stairs, a female stage manager, not a man, and he was fired and told to leave the premises. So, on a boat headed from London to New York, he met a woman that would be, exponentially important in his life. Her name was Lily DeMotta, and she was a very prominent actress in Hollywood at the time. And she was 5 years his senior. And she was beautiful. And he met her, and he married her. And her contacts alone proved invaluable in getting Errol Flynn a foothold in Hollywood, basically. Through his connections with his wife, he was able to be cast in a major Hollywood film, and as like the star or the co-star And it was a film called Captain Blood. And it was a swashbuckling sea adventure film. And basically, it was tailor-made for somebody like Errol Flynn, who would spend most of his movie career in these type of roles, these heroic, swashbuckling type of roles, usually period pieces. So he had a good time making this movie, and he became sort of an overnight sensation. After he did Captain Blood, he waltzed into the title role, the starring role in Robin Hood with Olivia de Havilland as Maid Marian. And of course, there was an immediate chemistry between these two stars. It was palpable on screen and off. And sadly, they never really got together. De Havilland was a lady of sorts, and she did not want to simply sleep with her leading men. She wanted to get married to Flynn. She was really in love with him, but he said, no thanks to marriage. I'm actually already married. So, she thought, maybe you'll leave Lily DeMotta for me, but that just never happened. And but there's a funny anecdote that she told years later, in which there's the balcony scene, and he has to kiss Maid Marian or something, passionately kiss Maid Marian, and then run off because there's a noise or something. And she kept flubbing her lines on purpose, so that he would have to kiss her passionately over and over again. Eventually, this caused him to have a major hard-on, and she thought this was hysterical because he's wearing tights, and it's obvious what's going on here, and she did this on purpose. And she told this story years later, so this is from her own mouth, again, I'm assuming. And so they had to shoot the scene over and over again and wait for things to settle down so that they could get this scene going. But he was that was something else. Okay, so by this time, Flynn's a big star. He thinks he can do anything he wants. I'm going to read this part in my book because it's interesting enough about, the antics that went on with Errol Flynn. Flynn didn't seem to mind that he was just a pretty boy in pretty pictures. The money rained down, and along with it, the drugs, the alcohol, and the women. He developed a reputation almost immediately for debauchery, and his antics became legendary. He and fellow partner in lewdness, David Niven, who never gets enough credit for being as wild as he actually was, by the way, threw wild parties at Marion Davies. Remember, we talked about her earlier, at Marion Davies' beach house. Actually, a palatial estate sprued across the sands of Santa Monica that would have impressed a czar, which they sublet from Davies in the 1930s. Nicknamed Cirrhosis of the Sea by Carol Lombard, it was the orgy house to end all orgy houses, with a place where Errol Flynn pretended he was a carefree bachelor when he actually wasn't. Hello, Lily DeMotta, okay? He had been married to Lily DeMotta for years, and this moment and this inconvenient reality did not seem to slow him down. So I gotta wonder why he married Lily. Was it for love or was it for contacts? These beach parties were awash in booze, cocaine, and all sorts of other illicit activities. And they went on for days. So, in other words, makes the Playboy Mansion look like Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farms house. Yes, he was notorious in Hollywood. Like I said, more interesting off the screen than on the screen. But he was on the screen in a lot of films. In 1939, he snagged a key supporting role in a big-budget costume drama with Bette Davis, the reigning queen of Warner Brothers at the time, called The Private Lives of Elizabeth and Essex. And we know that Betty didn't have any interest in Errol Flynn romantically. Apparently during one scene, she slapped him a little harder than she's supposed to. And Errol Flynn said, oh, she's just pissed off because I don't want to sleep with her. But in fact, she really didn't think Errol Flynn was up to this role. And she was a consummate professional. And when he showed little interest in researching the role or actually trying to play an Englishman rather than an Australian. And she really she suffered no fools. And to Betty Davis, Errol Flynn was a fool, okay? The movie was great, and there was definitely chemistry between them, but they were never F-buddies, friends with benefits. Nope. She must have been one of the few actresses in Hollywood that rejected him, along with Olivia de Havilland, okay? I might add. So, yeah. I'm going to read another section in my book about how interesting Errol Flynn was. Flynn's impressive residence on Malibu Drive was also party central. It contains some interesting architectural novelties, as Ron Wood of the Rolling Stones found out after he purchased the property in the 1970s. Quote, Errol had a two-way mirror and a speaker in the ladies' room, he said. He also had a black leather padded bar with a secret compartment that opened into a cramped viewing room that had a two-way mirror looking into the restroom. Really? Really, Errol? Come on, okay? What a perv. In addition, he had a two-way mirror installed in the guest bedroom, and crawl space in the attic above, which served as the viewing room for his voyeurism. Robert Douglas, his co-star in Don Juan, claimed Flynn showed him the room, and they proceeded to have some fun with the young, naked couple sleeping there at that time. Wonder who that was. Flynn pushed a button, and up popped a screen, which woke them up. Flynn pushed another button, and a porn movie began playing. They were so shocked, they just sat there, watching. He got bored and went down to get a drink. Tisk, tisk, Errol. I mean, this is high school. This is what high school boys would do if they had the money, essentially. This guy just was... I mean, it's funny until it's not funny, right? Part 2, we're going to check out how life, debauchery, poor choices, and eventually death caught up with Errol Flynn at the very early age of 50. Stay tuned.